4:50. $4.40. I'd like to call to order the June 2, 2015 meeting of the Buncombe County Board of Commissioners. And as always, I'll ask you to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance to begin the meeting.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And now, if you'll join me in prayer. Thank you for the stable world we live in. While we fret about where we're going to eat supper, or where to exercise, what credit card to use, other people in the world are starving, recovering from earthquakes, floods, domestic violence, torture, and other things that are unimaginable to us. Their concerns make our world seem pretty shallow. Help us to remember we're put on this earth to enrich the lives of our family, friends, and community, and to share the bounty you've given us with folks that don't have as much as we do. Slap us with reality in the cold truth of others who are fading, seeking, and slowly losing hope and optimism that tomorrow could possibly be better than today. We just have this belief so readily that it is hard for some of us to imagine anyone not feeling like we do. Keep us responsive to poverty, pain, and the spiritual needs of our neighbors and people that we know, that we see on the streets, and some people we may never formally meet. We appreciate this opportunity to serve others and to direct policy that might help some of these horrible situations that some of our brothers and sisters are facing. Thank you for this day. Thank you for these people. Thank you for these individuals in the audience. And thank you for the chance to represent the good men and women and children of Buncombe County. Amen. In accordance with our Code of Ethics, all commissioners have a duty to obey all applicable laws regarding official actions, to uphold the integrity and independence of the office, to avoid impropriety in the exercise of official duties, to faithfully perform the offices of the duties of the office, and to conduct the affairs of the governing board in an open and public manner. Is there any item on the agenda the outcome of which will have a direct, substantial, and readily identifiable financial impact for any board member? If none, does any board member have a financial interest in any public contract that might be on the agenda and come before the board today? Hearing none that I find that there are no conflicts tonight, and there are all members have a duty and obligation to vote on each matter before us. For public comment, the time limit for any comment is 3 minutes. If your time expires, you may leave any questions along with your name, address, and phone number with the county manager. Commissioners are not expected to comment on matters during public comment. This is your time to talk with us about your concerns and things you want us to know. Comments should be limited to subjects that are within the jurisdiction of the Commission and or pertain to matters upon which we may act. Any individual speaking during public comment shall address the entire board. Any polling of commissioners is inappropriate. Persons addressing the commission are expected to observe the decorum of the chamber and be respectful of everyone in the room, whether you agree with their opinion or not. Everyone has a right to be heard, and we want to hear from everybody in a respectful manner. Any person who willfully interrupts, disrupts, or disturbs the session will be asked to leave the meeting, and the commission reserves the right to deny any public address on any subject previously presented to the board. We're open for public comment, and again, if your comments are directed toward the Economic Development Incentive for AVL Technologies, the Thomas Montgomery rezoning request, or the fiscal year 16 budget, there will be a later time to hear from you on your public comments on those matters. So any other public comment? Yes, sir, in the back, Mr. Yelton. Who wants to speak after Mr. Yelton? Yes, ma'am. You two, and you two. You can just come on up and sit on the front row if you'd like. If you'll give your name and where you live. Thank you.
Don Yelton, Jupiter, North Carolina. And I want to read a couple of passages from Saul Alinsky's Rules for Radicals. This is not directly directed toward the budget. It's directed toward the entire board and the staff that's set up there. With very rare exceptions, the right things are done for the wrong reasons. It is futile to demand that men do the right thing for the right reason. This is a fight with the windmill. I feel like every time I'm up here and I make comments, I'm fighting a windmill. Because very seldom do we see the right thing done for the right reason. We see things done for a political move to play to voters, to play to people. Next quote from Saul Alinsky. The moment one gets into the area of 25 million and above, let alone $1 billion, the listener is completely out of touch, no longer really interested because the figures have gone above his experience and are almost meaningless. Millions of Americans do not even know how many $1 million make up $1 billion. And I strongly suggest that you keep those two comments. Very seldom is the right thing done for the right reason. And as you set up there as elected officials to represent us, that is your job, to establish policy, procedure, and consider how it affects the little old lady who can barely pay her taxes. And that does not, and is not tied to the budget, because I've been looking at the budget, and I'll make my comments for that time, and I'll give you a minute back. Can you believe that, David? And by the way, please instruct everybody how to talk. Not everybody has the voice that you and I have. Okay?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Yelton. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Angelica Wynn, and I'm the Executive Director of Our Voice. I also wanted to thank the County Commissioners very profusely from the bottom of my heart for their support of the Family Justice Center, as well as the county's comprehensive plan to address domestic violence. While we are a sexual assault agency, we come across sexual assault survivors who have experienced sexual violence as the intimate partner violence. And so this is something that is very near and dear to our hearts at Our Voice. One of the reasons that I'm so thankful for both of those projects that you have supported is because it sends a strong message to our community that domestic violence will not be tolerated in this community. It also sends a message to survivors who have been impacted by domestic violence that this county is here to support you and to help you to create a life that is free of domestic violence, a life that is free of fear and terror.
The reason I came is because I wanted to express my support of the District Attorney's Office request for funding for their DV unit. It is crucial as we move forward with the Family Justice Center and the county's comprehensive plan that we ensure that there are enough resources to respond to domestic violence, more particular around offender accountability. If we do not have the resources where we can move quicker with the cases or have a victim witness coordinator that can work with the survivor as they navigate through an often daunting process, the likelihood of the perpetrator being found not guilty or not, the survivor not moving forward in the process is increased. We want to make sure that we do have the resources when survivors of domestic violence are willing to move forward with the judicial system. Otherwise, offenders will not be held accountable and just left with the message in the community that domestic violence, it's okay because we're not in a community that can support the elimination of it. And so again, I strongly encourage for funding of the district attorney's request for a DV unit. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Nguyen. Yes, ma'am.
My name is April Burgess Johnson, and I'm the Executive Director for Helpmate, Buncombe County's nonprofit that serves victims of domestic violence. And I'll echo what Angelica said in thanking this commission once again for its incredible support of the Family Justice Center and the continued implementation of the Buncombe County Comprehensive Plan to reduce domestic violence. We know from the World Health Report that if we honestly want to prevent domestic violence, not just intervene, but prevent it, that we have to send a strong, unequivocal message to our community that domestic violence is not tolerated. We know that from local research, we know that from research across the world, that strong, swift criminal justice sanctions are a deterrent to domestic violence. For that reason, I strongly support the District Attorney's proposal to this commission to form a domestic violence prosecutorial unit, which is also a best practice in addressing domestic violence. One of the things that we know about the way that the system is set up now is that law enforcement have really worked hard to improve their response, to make sure that they are bringing as much evidence as possible to the district attorney's office to be able to prosecute cases. However, even though we have well-trained, dedicated, committed individuals working in the district attorney's office, the system is simply overloaded. And those assistant district attorneys and victim witness legal assistants don't always have the time that they need to be able to sit with each victim and adequately prepare that case for prosecution. That results in multiple continuances and victims walking into a system where they expect justice and are told time and time again that they need to wait for their day in court. That sends the wrong message both to victims who are taking that courageous step to become a state's witness. It also sends the wrong message to offenders that we'll get you one day. We really need to have a swift and strong response to domestic violence to be able to deter it. And we've seen that precedent set in our counties that are similarly sized to Buncombe, such as Forsyth County, where they invest almost $700,000 per year in their court system, almost $500,000 of which is directed towards prosecuting domestic violence, because they have learned that if you investigate and prosecute assault crimes, and you do that early, it saves you later on having to investigate and prosecute homicides. Thank you.
Thank you, April. Other public comment tonight? Mr. Rice? Anyone want to speak after Mr. Rice? Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Children is always on my mind, not from a political standpoint because I'm not a politician. I don't shake hands and pat babies on the back and hold them and do all that for political reasons. I do it for the real reason. I've done it for 27 years and still going to do it as long as the Lord lets me live. But you know, I love education. And I want to share a story with you that I've already forwarded to you. And I feel like I've been vindicated by someone other than my peers. These are from Harvard graduates. And it's a story that is called The Best and the Worst Place to Grow Up, the New York Times, May 4th, 2015 article. when the Asheville Citizen Times and other papers in our community don't get it, why does the New York Times get it? Where is our folks at in the community? Because we need people on the ground that's telling the story, not we have to go to the New York Times to find the story. Mr. Gann, I promised you last week I'd come back and tell you this story. You've already commented on it with the New York Times. Have you seen it in the local paper? No. Have you heard about it anywhere? No. But let me say what it says about Buncombe. I've talked about poor kids for years and years. I've talked about DSS. I've talked about schools, DJJ, the court system, and how that it is being overrun just like you heard in domestic violence. Where does all this stem from? Think about it. If you can't get your feet off of the ground, make a good living wage, and have a family unit, you're not going very far. Nowhere. And for years, I've said this, so I feel vindicated. Buncombe County is extremely bad for income mobility for children in poor families. It is among the worst counties in the U.S. It's among the worst counties in the U.S. in helping poor children up the income ladder. It ranks 92 out of 2,478 counties, better than only 4% of counties. It is relatively worse for poor boys than it is for poor girls. I want this board to think about this and see what we can do about our community, because the only thing it's going to do is get worse and worse on what we've been hearing. And let me tell you, it ain't a Democrat and a Republican thing. It's like Mr. Yelton said, it's time politicians got down to the real reason and quit doing the politics.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Rice. Any other public comment at this point? If not, is there a motion to follow the agenda as we've discussed in pre-session?
So moved.
Chair seconds. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Then we will follow the agenda as we've published it by a 7-0 vote. This also includes, for anyone here on the consent agenda, that's part of the process that we've approved the items on the consent agenda. The next thing we have is Good News Proclamations, Vulnerable Adults and Elder Abuse Awareness Month. We have Dawn Warren, I think, is here with Buncombe Health and Human Services. Commissioner Belcher.
Present this to you, and then we'll let you speak. How's that?
Excellent.
All right. Let me trade places with you. Okay. Get in front of the mic. All right. So it's my pleasure to present this proclamation on behalf of the board. County of Buncombe Proclamation of Vulnerable Adults and Elder Abuse Awareness Month. Whereas Buncombe County's vulnerable and elder adults deserve to live safely with dignity, and whereas vulnerable and elder adults of all socioeconomic, racial, and ethnic backgrounds may be the targets of abuse, neglect, or exploitation which occurs in families, long-term care facilities, and communities, and whereas 1,665 reports of abuse, neglect, or exploitation of vulnerable and elder adults were made to Buncombe County Health and Human Services in 2014, with 1,157 screened in for evaluation, which was the second highest number among all 100 counties in North Carolina. And whereas many cases of elder abuse and mistreatment go unreported and professionals are often unaware of the problem, and whereas protecting Buncombe County's vulnerable and elder adults is a community responsibility, and it is imperative that communities work together to help reduce and prevent abuse, neglect, and exploitation, including physical, psychological, or financial abuse. And whereas in 2030 it is projected that 3 in 10 residents of Buncombe County will be over the age of 60, and whereas all residents should watch for signs of abuse such as physical trauma, withdrawal, depression, anxiety, fear of family members, friends, or caregivers, and report suspected abuse or exploitation to the County Health and Human Services offices. Now therefore be it proclaimed by the Board of Commissioners for the County of Buncombe as follows, that this board does hereby proclaim June 2015 as Vulnerable Adults and Elder Abuse Awareness Month in Buncombe County, that this board does hereby encourage all citizens to participate in community efforts to support and improve the safety and well-being of vulnerable and elder adults and secure their right to live free of abuse, neglect, and exploitation, that this proclamation be effective upon its adopted this second day of June 2015, Buncombe County Board of Commissioners, signed by Chairman Gant. Chairman, I move adoption of this proclamation.
Okay, is there a second? Second by Commissioner DeBrule. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. The resolution is adopted by a 7-0 vote.
Chairman Gant, Commissioners, Dr. Green, Ms. Stone, Mr. Creighton, I want to thank you so much today for this proclamation of Elder Abuse Awareness and Vulnerable Adult Awareness Month in Buncombe County. And I would like to take just one moment and introduce to you your staff that carries out this duty every single day with the utmost dedication and commitment to their job. So, Adult Protective Services Unit, would you stand, please? This is the face of you in our community that goes into the homes and the facilities every single day, night and day, 365 days a year, to make sure that this most vulnerable segment of our population is protected with dignity, that their rights are preserved, that the least restrictive alternatives are given to them, and that utmost they have the right to self-determination to determine whether or not they are going to accept our services, as long as they have the capacity to do so. So thank you, staff, for the incredible job that you do every day in making sure our vulnerable citizens are safe. And again, thank you. Without your support and without the resources to do our job, this population would go unnoticed. I won't repeat the proclamation, but as Commissioner Belcher said, a lot of times these are the folks that nobody sees. They're isolated. They're often ashamed of the conditions that they're in. They're confused. They don't a lot of times even realize what's going on with them, with their finances, with their physical care. And so without your support, we wouldn't be able to do the job to make sure these folks are safe. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Warren. Is Mr. Lack here? Since we don't have a representative, I'll just ask Commissioner Jones to read it from here, the Korean War Veterans Recognition Day proclamation.
Thank you, Chairman. It is my honor to read this proclamation for Korean War Veterans Recognition Day. Whereas the Korean War started on June the 25th, 1950, and ended on July 27th, 1953, and whereas over 40,000 American soldiers died in the Korean War and more than 100,000 were wounded, and whereas in 2009, President Barack Obama signed House Resolution 2632, the Korean War Veterans Recognition Act, and whereas this act added National Korean War Veterans Armistice Day to the list of days on which the display of the flag of the United States is encouraged, and whereas this year is the 65th anniversary of the beginning of the Korean War, and this board wishes to recognize June 25th as Korean War Veterans Recognition Day in honor of those who gave the ultimate sacrifice in Korea. And whereas this board further recognizes our Korean War veterans who deserve our unending respect and gratitude for their courageous actions in pursuit of freedom and democracy. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed by the Board of Commissioners for the County of Buncombe as follows, that this board does hereby declare June the 25th, 2015 as Korean War Veterans Recognition Day in Buncombe County. That all citizens be urged to recognize the contribution of our Korean War veterans and are encouraged to observe this day by flying the American flag. That this proclamation be effective upon its adopted this second day of June 2015, and that is signed by Chairman David Gant. Chairman, I move approval of this proclamation.
There's been a motion by Commissioner Jones, a second by Commissioner Fryer. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. We will make sure Mr. Lack, who is the commander of Chapter 314, Korean War Veterans Association gets this. Thank you. Next, we have public hearings. We're going to start with the economic development incentives for AVL industry technologies, and Mr. Creighton's going to tell us about that. John?
Mr. Chairman, board members, as you mentioned, I would like to talk to you about AVL Technologies tonight and an incentive for them. The last couple of months, I came to you all and talked about an expansion that AVL Technologies was planning on doing. Just a little background, Jim Oliver came to our community in the early 90s, founded AVL Technologies in 1994, and today he employs over 160 people. His headquarters is located here in Buncombe County, and he has 2 regional offices, one in United Kingdom and one in China. So, like I say, I was approached by the EDC a couple months ago with an expansion that AVL Technologies is planning on doing. Judy, can you bring up the first slide? But at that point, Jim was saying that there was going to be a 2-phase project, that there was going to be $11.5 million in investment in an expansion of a new building, and he was going to hire 90 additional employees at an average wage of $40,000 each. And what I was recommended to you all as far as the incentive was, based on the $11.5 million and the 90 new employees at $40,000 each, that we pay $301,047 over 5 years. And I just want to talk a little bit about how that trickles back through the economy. Excuse me. If you take the 90 jobs at $40,000, that's $3.6 million a year. And you look at indirect jobs associated with those direct jobs. All of a sudden, Mr. Oliver has got an additional building that has to be cleaned. The janitorial service as well. We can't clean both buildings. We've got to hire 2 additional people. The supplier is bringing in additional copy paper. Maybe needs a new person to make those deliveries. So when you look at those indirect jobs, that's $2.1 million a year. And then you look at the induced being, all of a sudden now I've got a better job, I'm making better wages. Maybe we can go out to eat on Friday night, and the restaurants as well, the business is picked up. Now I've got to hire additional waiter or different service personnel. So those are induced jobs being at the $1.3 million. And then you look at the taxes that are generated from that facility, being all sorts of taxes, being business taxes, our county taxes, the town of Woodfin's taxes. That's an additional $783,000 a year. So you look at a total of $7.8 million a year. Now, our original investment was, like I say, $301,000, and that will be paid over 5 years. This $7.8 million is accumulative every year. So when you look at our investment and the return on that investment, really is about 125 to 1. So it really rolls through the economy. When that one job is created, it creates additional jobs. Judy? And it just kind of looking at that, those 90 jobs really create 183 jobs when you look at the direct, indirect, and induced jobs. So I think that one thing I've known Jim Oliver a long time over the years. I've had association with him with the incubator and other things at AB Tech. And I want to say one thing, that I'm really glad that he came to this community in the early 90s, decided to build this facility here and employ and grow in our community. And I'd like to ask Jim to come up, talk a little bit about what he plans to do, and then we'll be more than happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Sir, Mr. Oliver.
Yes, it's a great pleasure. I stand here. I'm able to announce an addition to AVL technology. I don't know if y'all heard of the term BHAG. That means, I'm trying to think.
Very audacious.
Big, hairy, audacious goal, excuse me, yeah. Big, hairy, audacious goal, and one of the visions I've had here when I moved to Asheville, and I heard about all the jobs moving, the Volvo plant closing, Square D moving, Upward Marine Corporation up in Yancey County. I decided I wanted to see what I could do to create jobs here. So we've been able to create 165 jobs. So far, I decided there was a flat piece of land, and that's hard to find in Buncombe County, I'll tell you that, because I looked for it for 2 years. And I decided to buy it, and we're going to put up a building that has 40,000 square feet of manufacturing space, 20,000 feet of office space. AVL, we believe, will expand into one half of it. We're also looking for some tenants to move in it. We have designed it so it will look like a technology park there across from our building, and we hope to create over the 90 jobs. My goal is 150, but I've signed up at 90. I'd like to introduce you to two people that are key to this expansion. Mike Profit, the new president of AVL. I want to tell you he's a native of Yancey County, went to AB Tech and Western, was one of the casualties of OMC moving. He is now the president. His job will be to produce everything in this building. I'd like to introduce Brian Kearns. Brian Kearns is one of our key account executives. He's a native of Mitchell County. He's an NC State graduate. We're able to get him back here into the mounds, and his job is to find the business to fill it up. So we're excited about the challenge. I got that building. We're going to break ground on it in about a month here, and I want them to see it rising out of the ground and to up the jobs and move them in there. So, any questions?
Any questions, Mr. Oliver?
Just have a comment. I had an opportunity to tour your facility with a large group of teachers from Buncombe County Schools a few months ago, and it was wonderful. I want to thank you for opening up, your place to allow that to happen. And that news went through the school system, and kids are hearing it, and that's what's encouraging to me for the future. If people look, young people looking to your industry and following your leadership. So I want to thank you for that.
Glad to do it.
Any other questions or comments before we start our public hearing? Thank you, Mr. Oliver. If none, I'll open the public hearing on our proposal to consider economic development incentive for AVL Technologies at 514. Any members of the public wish to be heard on this? Mr. Rice? Anybody else want to speak after Mr. Rice?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I've heard these things, incentives, for years, at least 21 years, long before you come, Mr. Gant. But incentives statewide is not getting recognized in a good way, even though they've increased it at the General Assembly level. You can justify with numbers anything you want to justify. I think they did that after I brought up several comments in the last few years about these incentives. I think if a business has got the money to go, like the one out in Arden, $1 billion industry, and they're making in a quarter profit in 1 quarter billions of dollars. My God, what do they need with incentive money? Now, I'm not talking about somebody at grassroots level trying to help us here. But when you start talking about these little jobs that they bring in, what is it? It's service jobs. That's what tourist town's all about. Now, I didn't miss what I heard here. $40,000 jobs here? They didn't break it down and say who the $40,000 going to. Was it the 90 people, or was it the admin at the top and the supervisors and people in big paying jobs? Or is it the real people that needs a job? I think we need to start asking serious questions here and not avoiding them. I don't mind seeing people make $40,000 because that's going to get above the living wage. Actually, it's above teacher pay. What's wrong? That's above the starting teacher pay. So at least the man is giving some good recognition to some good people. But I don't think it's touching the surface on what we need to do here. These incentive packages, we're getting the blossom, but we're not getting the meat. We're not hearing the end result of these things. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rice. Does anybody else have a public comment on the economic development incentive proposal for AVL Technologies? If not, I'll declare the public hearing closed at 5:17. Is there a motion to adopt the incentive? And then if there is, I'll take comments and discussion from the board.
I'll make a motion.
Been a motion by Commissioner Newman, a second by Commissioner Frost. Mr. Creighton, do you have?
No, sir.
Okay, he's there for questions. Any comments or questions? Been a motion and a second.
We're just lucky to have this industry in our community, and appreciate Mr. Oliver's commitment and leadership over the years, both in bringing us jobs, and he's been a great corporate citizen as well. So it's a pleasure to know that it continues.
125 to 1 return on investment's pretty strong, and we appreciate you. I echo what Commissioner Jones says. You started this from nothing, and we really appreciate your service, your offerings of community, because one of the biggest complaints we get all the time we're here is there are no good jobs here, and no good manufacturing jobs has been a mantra, and you've disproved that by your company, and we appreciate that. Any other discussion or comments? If not, I'll call the question. All those in favor of the motion by Commissioner Newman, second by Commissioner Frost, to fund the $301,000 incentive as articulated by Mr. Creighton, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Then that incentive is adopted by a 7-0 vote. Thank you. Yes, Commissioner Vice Chair Belcher indicated it is spread over 5 years.
60 a year.
Go ahead, sir.
See, I apologize.
Okay, all right. Next, we have a public hearing on the rezoning request from Thomas Montgomery from R2 to CS, and Debbie Trumpy will talk about that. You are welcome to stay, but anybody was here for the AVL, you're welcome to go. That's up to you. We certainly welcome you to stay for the whole meeting, but anytime your business is through, you're welcome to get up. It doesn't disrupt us. Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Thomas Montgomery has applied to rezone tax lot pin 9678689411 and a portion of tax lot pin 9678780100 totaling 7.9 acres from R2 residential district to CS commercial service. The parcels are adjacent to each other and are located on the north side of US 70, just west of the Sylvester Way intersection. The properties are undeveloped except for a single-family home. While the parcels adjacent to the subject properties are vacant or residential, there is commercial development in the area and CS zoning along US 70. The Planning Department recommends approval of the request as CS zoning is consistent with the Buncombe County Comprehensive Land Use Plan. The 2013 plan update highly suggests that commercial development be located within reasonable proximity to major transportation corridors and to combined public water and sewer service areas. Given that there's commercial development along US 70 and the CS zoning district is across US 70 from the property, the proposed zoning is consistent with the surrounding area. The Planning Board held a public hearing on this application May 18th. One person spoke during public comment. He stated he had property in the area and would like to see more commercial development along US 70. He also noted that because of noise from traffic and trains and the location on a 5-lane highway, the area is better suited for commercial than residential development. The Planning Board found that the proposed rezoning would be consistent with the land use plan, reasonable, and in the public interest, and recommended approval of the rezoning to CS in a vote of 8-1. I'll be happy to address any questions you have of me now.
All right, as I understand it, Ms. Trumpy, we need 2 resolutions, one on the consistency with our land use plan and the other one on the approval of the change. Is that right?
2 separate motions.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Any questions for Ms. Trumpy? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Then we will open the public hearing in the matter of the Thomas Montgomery rezoning request from R2 to CS. Does any member of the public wish to be heard? I'll open the hearing at 5:21. Okay, hearing none, I will close the public hearing at 5:22. Is there a motion? There will be first, we need a motion for consistency with our land use plan. Is there some specific wording that, is that?
You could say as provided in the resolution by the Planning Board or in the staff report, either way.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve as provided by the resolution in the Planning Board that's consistent with our land use plan?
So moved.
There's been a motion by Commissioner Jones. Is there a second? Second. Second by Commissioner Frost. Is there any further discussion among the board? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of granting the rezoning request, to find that the rezoning request is consistent with our land use plan and the consistency is provided in the resolution from the Planning Board. All those in favor of that consistency motion say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Then the consistency motion is adopted by a 7-0 vote. Is there a motion to approve the rezoning request of R2 to CS as discussed?
I'll make a motion and find that the request is consistent with the County Comprehensive Land Use Plan, reasonable, and in the public interest.
All right. There's a motion to accept. Is there a second? Second. There's a second by a motion for to approval by Vice Chair Belcher, second by Commissioner DeBrule. Is there any further discussion among the board? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Then that rezoning request is granted by a 7-0 vote. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Trumpy. Next, we're going to have our public hearing on the fiscal year 15-16 budget. We'll start off with Dr. Green, who has given us a presentation 2 weeks ago. We will not ask her to do that again, but just maybe some highlights before we get started with the public hearing.
Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, a few highlights from the budget is we're bringing you a total budget of $387.5 million. Of that, $307.6 million is our general fund, where we spend property tax. It is a decrease from the 15 budget because of the amended budget included our refinancing, where we were able to save several $1 million on our debt. This budget does not have an increase in the tax rate. There's some shifting of cost between the 15 and the 16 budget. Things that we have to cover or that we are adding to or reducing our budget by. There's new cost for incentives, for behavioral health, greenways, some domestic violence programs and renovations. Do have a loss of some grants, and the debt service is now included for Isaac Dixon in its entirety and for a portion of Asheville Middle School based on when we think it will actually open. We also heard requests from our city and county schools, from AB Tech, and from our DA. And we do continue to evaluate not only those requests from outside the organization, but the internal requests that we have from our departments. Look forward to the input that we'll have from the public as we reach and make some final decisions and hopefully adopt a budget 2 weeks from tonight. Happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Any questions for the county manager before we begin our public hearing? Before we start, I would like to recognize our district attorney, Todd Williams, is here. Thank you for being here, Mr. Williams. And I think I see our sheriff behind the beam there. Thank you. Also see our superintendent of county schools, Dr. Tony Baldwin, is here. Thank you all for being here. And Pam, that man covered you up. Dr. Pam Baldwin is also here from the city schools. He is bigger than you are, and I could not see around. I'm sorry for that. Good to see you, both Dr. Baldwins. Dr. Dennis King had the line the other day. We had them all three here, and his line was, well, I'm Dennis Baldwin, because he felt left out because there were 2 Dr. Baldwins representing our K through 12, we're glad to have them both. They're wonderful. So I will go ahead with that. We'll start our public hearing on the fiscal year 2015-2016 budget at 5:26. Any members of the public wish to be heard? Yes, ma'am. Taylor? And why don't we've got 3 seats at the front. If anybody else wants to come, just if you'll sit just to the your right over here next to Mr. Plemons. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. My name is Taylor Foss, and I serve as the chair of the Economic Development Coalition. I also serve as one of the 4 co-chairs of AVL 5x5. And I am the Senior Vice President for Organizational Transformation for Mission Health, our community's largest employer. I'd like to ask my colleagues who are here tonight to raise their hands. Thank you. 5 years ago, a new economic development strategy was unveiled to attract and retain jobs and to improve career opportunities for our citizens. The strategy behind AVL 5x5 united business leaders, government, and community around a focused strategy that built upon 5 industry clusters for 5 years. I'm here today to report that that strategy has worked, and worked well. Through April of this year, over 6,200 direct and indirect jobs have been created on an initial aggressive goal of 5,000 jobs. We landed a total of 35 projects. Some were brand new to the community, like Linamar, White Labs, and New Belgium. And some were expansions of existing companies that were being courted to go elsewhere, like GE Aviation's groundbreaking ceramic matrix composite site, Borg Warner's expansion of its turbo systems manufacturing facility in Arden, and Kirfak Corporation's expansion in Black Mountain, Swannanoa. The investments made in these projects resulted in almost $1 billion in capital investment during the 5-year period. That spending has had a positive ripple effect on a wide range of existing industry. As our competing cities can attest, these projects just don't happen on their own. They were hard won. They required excellent research, an outstanding website, and the skilled work of incredible economic developers who are creative problem solvers. They also required the participation of private sector partners who shared their experiences about living and working in Asheville and Buncombe County. And last but not least, they required wise public sector investment in projects that will provide jobs and return on investment for years to come. The Buncombe County Commission has been our essential partner in these projects, and for that we thank you. We also thank you for including funding for both operating expenses as well as a contribution to the AVL 5x5 plan in your budget for 2015-16. We respectfully request your support for increasing the operational dollars by $25,000 per year, and we ask that you consider adding $20,000 to your annual contribution to AVL 5x5. Collaboration has been one of our critical components in our success in landing these deals. We ask that you continue that collaboration with your next budget decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Taylor. And I'm going to hit the pause before we hear from Mr. Hamrick. Thank you. Does anybody have any questions? I forgot to do this. Any having questions for the fire chiefs that are here on the districts? I forgot that.
Oh, man.
If there are any, I'll just pause the public hearing real quick here because they're here for that. And if not,
well,
Okay, is there none? Okay, hearing none, we'll go on. Mr. Hamrick, go ahead. Thank you. Thank you for being here, Chiefs.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, thank you for allowing me to make comments today. My name is Ben Hamrick. I serve as the Chair of the Board of Directors of the Asheville Area Chamber of Commerce. I'm also the CEO of Johnson Price Sprinkle Certified Public Accountants and a lifelong resident of this area. Taylor has told you a bit about AVL 5x5. As an accountant, I like numbers. I especially like the numbers that are produced by the AVL 5x5 campaign. I'd like to share a few of those with you today. From 1994 through 2010, the average capital investment for projects was approximately $37 million. From 2010 through 2014, the period of AVL 5x5 strategy, capital investments have averaged approximately $200 million per year. That's more jobs for workers and a stronger tax base. Over $104 million in state and local tax revenues and over $80 million in federal tax revenues have been generated by these projects. The total economic output for Buncombe County is $1.9 billion over this time period. For every dollar invested in AVL 5x5, $120 was returned. If I were talking with a client, I'd tell them they made a wise investment in AVL 5x5. If you look at the economic impact analysis, which I think you have a copy of, you'll see that $781 million of the announced investments have been made in manufacturing. The rest were in arts, culture, healthcare, science, technology, and other areas of industry. That diversification makes for a stronger economy. AVL 5x5 projects include over $96 million in construction activities, a sector that suffered during the recent recession. The average earnings per job for the new projects was $44,849, substantially above the current county average. While today we are asking for your continued support of the strategy, I wanted to underline that 70 private sector companies provide half of the funding for economic development in our community. They understand that a rising tide lifts all boats. We are in the process of approaching our top investors as consultants help us refine the plan. We're asking them to step up, and many already have, some very aggressively. But we have a lot more to raise. We respectfully request that you consider raising your contribution to AVL 5x5 by $20,000 a year over the next 5 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hamrick. Yes, ma'am, Ms. McGuire.
Good evening, Chairman Gant and Commissioners and County staff. Thank you so much for your dedicated public service. My name is Kim McGuire, and I am a member of the Asheville Art Museum Board of Directors. We are on the verge of launching the new expanded Asheville Art Museum, and we respectfully request county support to help us reach our goal. A few points to highlight our progress as an update to you all. Financially, we've now raised $17.2 million, $2.4 million just during the last year. An extraordinary investment when compared to other local projects, coming from private individuals and corporations, foundations located in North Carolina and around the country, and other governmental sources. Currently, we are 43% of the way toward reaching a $1 million challenge grant that we're matching with $2 million of local support. We have many promising requests out, and the county support is essential to all of our fundraising efforts. Our progress in the construction area, our essential first phase in the renovation and expansion is underway with the construction and installation of a new passenger elevator and secure ingress and egress to the Diana Wortham Theater. Major demolition and construction is calendared to begin later this year in 2015. The first phase of this project will create the 21st century glass facade on Pack Square and add permanent collection and changing exhibition space to serve many more visitors through exciting offerings. An update on our outreach. In the past 3 months, while continuing our outstanding schedule of exhibitions and educational programs, we've hosted events for 25 business leaders, 40 young community leaders and their children, an artists' input forum, and numerous individual donor tours. The next event up is for the many educators that we serve, to hear from them what they need most from our new facility. We're developing a busy schedule of off-site events and outreach educational activities for all ages during the construction period that will build interest and take the museum out into the community. We are on track for success to build a legacy project for this generation that will engage and inspire children and families and adults locally and their visitors for decades to come. It's something that we'll all be proud of as a major economic and educational boost to our wonderful county. Great communities have great cultural offerings. Thank you all, the county and our citizens, for being a partner in the past and in the future of our community art museum. I'm joined today by our chair of the board, Lynn Andrews, and executive director, Pam Myers, and we'd be happy to address any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. Yes, sir. Any public comment after this gentleman? Lisa, if you can come up and sit in the front row. Anybody else? Okay, go ahead. Yes, sir.
Good evening. Thank you, commissioners. I echo Kim's thanks for your service. My name is Hardy Holland, and I'm the chair of the Dinah Wortham Board. And I am here on behalf of the Pack Square Cultural Partnership. It was formed by our theater and the Asheville Art Museum, and I urge you to continue the county's support of our basic operations of these two organizations through this partnership that we have formed. Over the last year, the partnership has successfully worked through the development of a newly and highly functional management structure. Along with professional management, the new entity is efficiently and effectively managing our new facility and old facilities for the new, vibrant, growing, and important cultural and educational cornerstones of our community. The partnership has made improvements in all areas of operation and is well positioned to ensure success as each of our organizations moves through with their exciting plans of expansion to better serve the community into the future. County support of basic operations is essential to ensure that critical cultural and educational programming with the partnership members continues to provide all the services that are available to Buncombe County residents and all the visitors to our area. Thank you, and I urge you to support.
Thank you, Mr. Holland. Yes, ma'am, Ms. Baldwin. Any other members of the public wish to be heard after Ms. Baldwin? Mr. Yelton?
I'm Lisa Baldwin, a parent and a citizen of Buncombe County, as well as the founder of Buncombe Students First. With county school enrollment down by over 500 students this year and 172 more students expected to leave for charter schools next year, it's important to ensure that tax dollars are focused on teaching and learning. Instead of being presented with a carbon copy budget of last year's with the predictable $3 million increase, you should require a budget constructed from the ground up that addresses the real needs of teachers and students. I want to address 5 inequities in the budget you've been presented with, and I hope you will question this before approving it. The county schools has asked for pay for sports coaches. This totals nearly $1 million, but there's still no pay for academic coaches. For those coaching teams like Science Olympiad, math leagues, and debate teams. So I hope you'll address that inequity. The second inequity is the funding of over $600,000 for bonuses to principals and assistant principals. Now, the county commissioner gives every Buncombe County school employee supplemental pay, a supplement over the state-provided base pay. But this bonus is something different, and it's for extra duties performed by principals and assistant principals, like staying after school for a basketball game or a band concert, and the teacher is not getting extra pay necessarily for that band concert. So I would like you to look at that inequity, because teachers are always performing extra duties, but they're not getting bonus pay. The third one is you've been asked to fund positions that were created with grant money. Now that the grant money has run out, they're asking to make these permanent positions. However, the understanding has always been that when the grant money ends, the position ends, period. Many of these are mid-level management positions that don't impact students directly. Like, for example, a math or English language coach actually coaches teachers. Teachers are already trained to come up with lesson plans for their students. One teacher said the English language coach asked her what she needed, and she said, "I need books for my students. I know how to write lesson plans." Number 4, the county school board asked for an additional $4 per student for textbooks. Over the past 3 years, the amount of county money going towards classroom instructional supplies and textbooks has fallen drastically from $1.8 to $1.1 million. I think that's about a 34% decrease, but only to ask for $4 more per student is not adequate. And the last inequity is that county tax dollars will fund a political action committee, the School Board Association Action Center.
Thank you, Ms. Baldwin. Yes, sir, Mr. Yelton.
Now it's time to attack the windmills. I have some general comments that I hope are taken seriously, because I would hate to have your county manager's job and have to come up with a $300-some million budget, not knowing what the state's going to do, not knowing what the sales tax is going to be, not knowing what's going to happen, okay? But I go back and I look at the history, and I see a tax rate of 0.525 for several years. Then I see a tax rate of 0.569. And then I see a tax rate of 60.4. Now, in my little pea brain, that's an increase, but that was the year you had the Republican-oriented 3.5% tax for arts and culture. And it was there, I think, basically 2 years as I saw on this thing. And now that 3.5 is back in, and that's where you get your current tax rate. You say there's no increase. I want to know what happened to that 3.5 the year it was there. Where did it go? What was done with it? Because I don't think that was spent unless it was spent with regular items that was in the budget. And if it was, I'd like to know that for clarification. As a matter of fact, in my calculations, I see a 2% increase in taxable assets would produce about $3 million in actual revenue. So I was looking through some other numbers, and I see that this budget is $387,541,381. Then I look through another thing, and I find that the previous budget was $367,328,506. That's a 5.4% increase in the budget. Did that come from sales tax revenue, or did that come from increased investment by industry and taxing that? Because the largest employer in Buncombe County, Mission Hospital, pays no property taxes. And every time they buy up a doctor's office, they can lease it back to the doctor cheaper than the doctor can keep it, because the doctor had to pay property tax on it. So that's a fact we don't want to mention. We keep that one under the rug. That's for the Asheville Citizen Times reporter here, if she's still here. So I would like to see the budget presented in a very simple format. And this is something you don't need to do, Wanda. You don't have time to do it. I'd like to see the total budget and exactly a history of it, so we can see how we're growing, and we can see how we're changing, and we can see where the tax dollars come from. Those numbers are probably already there, but put them in a form that someone that's not an accountant, I think we had one here a minute ago, can read them and understand them. And I offer that very sincerely, because like I said, this budget's going to pass anyway.
Thank you, Mr. Yelton. Yes, sir, Mr. Rice. Does anyone want to speak after Mr. Rice on the budget, a public hearing?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I wish more people would come out and be invested in their community and in their commission meetings and really express the concerns. You said you was going to go out, and talk to the community, but you got cold feet when the budget started. I guess I wonder why. A gentleman said he didn't like numbers, or he did like numbers. Well, I don't like numbers. It just depends on what numbers you're talking about and who it affects. These taxes don't affect everybody because everybody's got maybe money to pay their taxes. Some people don't. So it depends on who you ask them whether they like numbers or not. I think commission here, and this is no joke, and I've seen it for years, politics. We need, as a commission, to sit down and talk about priorities that are real priorities among the staff, among the departments, and let me tell you, the county manager, and I know her well, she is a good one. And there ain't no telling how much frustration and heart attack she has over all these years listening to a bunch of politicians that don't know what to do with a budget or anything else. Then they have to come to some agreement, and she has to be the one to iron it out because they don't know how. And I'm talking about every one of them, not just one of them. Good Lord. She ought to have more money than any of them. That's for sure. Priorities, not politics. Taxpayers need some relief. And I ain't just joking. The only taxpayer relief I've seen was when Tom Sobel was here and they decreased it by 10 cents on the tax rate. You remember that, Mr. Gant? Sure. People did get a relief. But the commissioners had to sweat a little bit, didn't they? Because they didn't want to really tell the truth. Tom did. He wanted to tell the truth that the commissioners had plenty of fat in the budget. And let me tell you, it's still there. Okay. Increase from FY 13 to FY 15, $31,245,073. Now, I think we could help our community in many ways. And I'm going to give you one to start with. People coming up here begging for money, begging for money. There are plenty of things that can be done without money. You need to reorganize some of these nonprofits. One of them here, I'd like to say, has brought a whole crew of people here today, and it's a Chamber of Commerce. One way we could give them $20,000 a year for 5 years with no problem is to ask the head of Chamber of Commerce with $285,000 as her salary.
All right, Jared, let's finish up. Go ahead.
To finish it up is let her decrease it by $20,000 a year, and we can do something.
Thank you, Mr. Rice. Any other public comment tonight? All right. Hearing none, I will close the public hearing at 5:48. We will not vote on the budget tonight. We will vote on the budget in our next meeting. This was your time to hear from us. We will gladly and love to have any other public comment you have, but it won't be in this forum. If you want to write us, email us anything that you would like us to know about your feelings about this budget, we would treasure them and we would like to see them. So thank you for all being here for that. If anyone wants to leave, we're going to go on to some other business, and you are welcome. Anybody here for the budget is welcome to leave, or you're welcome to stay. Next, we do not have a county manager's report, I believe. Is that right? No county manager's report, they said earlier. All right, there's a designation for the voting member of the National Association of Counties Conference. Okay, I will be glad to hold down the fort for us. Are there any other nominations? Second by Commissioner Newman. Any other nominations? All right, then we'll vote. This is Vice Chair Belcher, second by Commissioner Newman, to assign me as the voting delegate for our county at the National Convention. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. By 7-0 vote, I will serve in that capacity. Thank you. Next, we have the resolution instructing the county manager to seek advice from the NRA and North Carolina Wildlife regarding the outdoor shooting range. We have a procedural issue that we must deal with before we can address this. We had a discussion in pre-session. There was some, if our policy is that when something has been decided, and this has been voted on 3 times, the last vote being April 7, 2015, that it cannot be brought back without a motion to reconsider. The motion to reconsider under our policy is that it must be made by the member who voted with the prevailing side, must be made at the same meeting at which the original vote was taken. Motion cannot interrupt deliberation or a pending matter, but is in order at any time before adjournment. That did not happen. I would like a discussion on this. I don't think we either, the way I see it is we either vote on the resolution if it is in order, but first we must decide if it's in order. Any 3 commissioners can put anything on our agenda. That has happened, so that it is, I will rule that it is properly on our agenda, but whether we take it up, since it has been decided before, is another matter that we must discuss. So I will take a discussion on this before we go further.
Okay, so I've got a comment on it. Didn't get a chance to make it earlier, but with respect to Commissioner Newman's mention, and I think our attorney about it. Sorry, I'll move it closer. I think that the way I read the motion, okay, I don't see it as a motion to reconsider, and I'll tell you why. On April the 7th, which I think is what we're referring to, where it was passed in consent, it's in order for it to be a motion to reconsider, then the language, it would have had to have been written as an indoor range. It was not. If you pull that up, and I have it here, it is in the consent, it is listed as a shooting range. So because where our discussion here, and if you look at the resolution, the resolution is just one seeking advice from the NRA and the Wildlife Commission for additional information to help with the decision. It's not to stop anything at all.
Is this a proposal to build an additional firing range in addition to the indoor firing range?
This is not a proposal to build anything, but anyhow,
if it were, then I could see that wouldn't be conflicting with a previous decision to move forward with an indoor firing range. But if there's basically is a request to put that on hold in favor of a different kind of facility, then I do think it is contrary to the previous.
In addition to what Chairman Belcher mentioned about regarding the April 7th vote, that my understanding, that was a budget ordinance. That was not a material discussion of the firing range. So I think if we wanted to listen to what Commissioner Fryer has to say, I think the fact that the vote that is in question is that from April 7th is actually just to direct the manager to seek financing. I think that this is to have this further discussion tonight is absolutely in order.
Any other discussion before the chair rules on the threshold question about the motion?
Well, I guess my last 2 cents on this, and I admit this might have been what you were kind of hinting at previously, Chairman Gant, but you know, I mean, aside from this particular item, I do just at a high level, my sort of layperson's understanding of our rules is that once the commission makes a decision, and when we choose to fund something, I mean, that, make no mistake, that is a decision. Like when we've chosen to spend taxpayer money to do something, that we have made a decision to do it. And I just think, I think that policy of not just bringing stuff back up over and over again, and I might be on the losing side of some issues where I'd love to bring it back up, but I think it's just, I think that's just sort of a dysfunctional way of handling stuff. We're all gonna win on some issues we like and lose on some, but I just don't think, you can just bring stuff back up for reconsideration over and over again if you don't like the outcome. So that's why I think the rule is important, and maybe just as a solution to this, because aside from that kind of the principle of the procedural question, I haven't heard anybody say that they are against the county manager talking to people and listening to people. So I think there's probably some practical resolution here if we want to say it's okay for the county manager to get input from citizens. I think she does that on a routine basis. So I don't have any problem with the conversation, but I don't want to bring back something up for a new decision that I think we have already decided, and I think that is, in many ways underway now. So those are my thoughts. Thank you.
All right.
Commissioner
Frost.
I think the county manager, Assistant County Manager Creighton, have spent years talking to wildlife, NRA, all sorts of other experts, community leaders, and have come to the conclusion that nobody wants an outdoor range anywhere. They don't want it in their neighborhood. They have spent untold hours, and to instruct them to once again have conversations with a different outcome, to me, is a waste of staff time, because they have done their due diligence, and the thing about our senior staff is they do their diligence before they ask us to vote on things that cost this kind of money. So I think it's a dangerous precedent to go back, review things when we've already voted on it. We've spent almost $1 million. The sheriff has done incredible due diligence with community members near where the training center is going to be. We have gotten input from the NRA in the past. Wildlife, NRA liked it. So I don't see the point of instructing them to do anything in this regard. I think they've done it.
Madam Clerk, can you give us the history of any votes on this particular item?
I believe on, there's 3. One I'm not familiar with, but 2 I am. On March the 3rd, the resolution to approve the financing for a great number of projects, and the firing range being one of them, was approved 6-1, with Commissioner Fryer voting against it. Then on April 7th, it came back to you in a capital projects ordinance. That's the financing, that's the next move, and that was approved under consent in a 7-0 vote.
But we had this discussion before then, and this board approved $2 million. The discussion goes back to when me and Ms. Frost become commissioners in Brownie. We went in a room, and there was $5 million on a sheet, and that was for a gun range. And then the next year, there's another $5 million on the sheet for a gun range. So they already had approval from the previous board for $10 million. Am I wrong or am I right, Ms. Green? Yes. Okay, so there was approval then. Then it come out in the newspaper that was way too much money, so everybody come in and shot that $10 million deal down that had already been voted on. Then it comes back to us, and we approved $2 million to do a gun range. I agree 100%. But then it comes back to us at $6.9 million. And I voted no. And then supposedly it turns around and goes down to $5.4 million. I'm not wanting to this discussion. All I'm asking is that the county manager has an opportunity, because we did personally meet with the NRA and the wildlife in Cleveland County at an outdoor gun range that was 82 acres, and they told us if they could help us in any way. Right now in Buncombe County, I want these law enforcement officers, if it's indoor, if it's wherever, it don't matter. But right now, we're only 75% of what we need for these law enforcement officers. They still have to go to Madison County for long guns. So if we can bring them in and they can find something that can make it work, so Buncombe County is 100%, and all the law enforcement officers can step forward, then whatever this comes about, if they come and they say, no, there's nothing we can do, that's totally fine. But we're looking at the professionals one more time to give us an idea to what happens. These are the professionals. If they walk in and they say, no, you don't need that place, that's fine. But if they say, this could be utilized, then maybe there's something we can utilize. But we are right now, whatever is on this, we are 75%. We need to give Buncombe County law enforcement 100%, because all I've heard is we may lose Madison County, and what would we do then? That's, and we still have that same opportunity today that we did then. So
All right.
all I want is the county manager. It's just simple. It's not trying to take anything away. It's just to get an idea if we can make it better.
Okay, we've gone way beyond the procedural discussion. I'm going to do this. This is something, because it does talk about before moving forward with the firing range. I think my ruling is that we have already discussed this. This is out of order. I would ask the county manager just directly, as any commissioner could at any time, to continue any conversations you might have with the NRA and or the wildlife about a firing range, and proceed with what we have.
Say that first part again. You're asking me.
I'm going to say continue any conversations you may have had with NRA and wildlife, as Commissioner Fryer has requested, but I'm going to rule this as out of order. We can't keep on talking about the same stuff over and over and over again, and that's the ruling of the chair.
Okay. I will have those conversations.
So we will not vote on anything. We will go forward. That's all the business I have today. Announcements, June 16 at 4:30. Our next board meeting will be in this same place, room 326 at 200 College Street in downtown Asheville. And that will be including we do have another public hearing on the budget. This says, but is there another public hearing? No. It says public hearing. Okay, so we will have county commission discussion about the fiscal year 2016 budget. I think we do have a need for a closed session. Is there a motion to go into closed session? And is there a second? Second. Motion by Commissioner Frost, second by Commissioner Belcher. We will not expect any action. This is economic development under what section? Is that right?
143-318.11A4.
Okay. All right. And there will vote on the motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Then we are in closed session. We do not expect any action afterwards. Thank you.